My life has been both a blessing and a curse. In the words of Alice, I give myself some very good advice, but I very seldom follow it. I have a real problem with low self esteem. I think it's a combination of how I was born and how I was raised, a combination of nature and nurture. Um, I think I've always innately had a a fragile ego. I remember feeling very hurt when I would express something earnest and it was laughed at because it was a stupid sentiment or a stupid question, and I was like, 5 years old. And so I guess it was funny to other people, my parents mostly. I guess it was funny to them, and so they would laugh at me, and I would be very, very hurt by that. Because I think it happens to everyone. I think everyone says funny things when they're kids, and they get laughed at, but some people develop a complex about it, and others don't. I'm one of the ones who did, and I've always been a naturally kind of distrustful person. I hated being called shy as a child because I thought that that was I don't know, not an insult necessarily, but a mark of immaturity. But I was called shy very often as a way to explain my behavior. And I was very shy. I didn't trust strangers. I didn't trust normal people, people who I didn't know very well. And this is still true about me. There's this anti Semitic book that I was reading a bit of a few months ago called Culture of Critique. It's actually a pretty good book. Although I call it anti Semitic, I don't think the author would characterize himself as anti Semitic. But I still think that it's undeniable that this book is anti. It's undeniable that this book is anti-Semitic because he criticizes the Jews from the perspective of an American conservative, saying that they're they're not necessarily undue influence, but their over representation in intellectual circles is bad for society, basically. And one of the things he talks about is some study that was done. I don't really know anything about the study other than what he said about it, but it was like they took babies born in different cultures, and the ones who were born in the Semitic culture were much more naturally distrustful of strangers. They would throw fits when around strangers in a way that the typical white European babies wouldn't. Now, I don't know if I don't. This study sounds a little bit sketchy to me, so I don't know if that really represents what's going on. But when I read that, I remember thinking, "Man, that's me. I'm the Semitic baby," because this has always been my thing. I've been very sort of naturally prejudiced against other people. And I was raised by a dad who I think is kind of similar in this way. I think my dad also is naturally distrustful of other people. I remember he didn't like my friends. He didn't like my mom's friends. He just, he had this kind of insular mentality. And as far as I know, when I was living with him, he didn't really know his neighbors. And so, I was raised in an environment where I wasn't really encouraged to form bonds with a lot of different people. I wasn't really encouraged to socialize a lot. And I was allowed to keep to myself a lot, and so I kind of became a bit feral. I kind of lost my ability to communicate with other people. And this drove me very inward, made me very reflective, made me very self critical. And I developed this this interesting sort of what we could call a blessing and a curse. I developed a lot of emotional awareness. I developed a lot of critical thinking, but at the cost of my social health and my mental health. For the past 10 years, I've suffered from social anxiety. It's not quite as bad as it used to be, but it's still pretty bad. And this kind of extrapolates into a general anxiety about doing things that involve other people. When I have an interaction with another person, it usually damages my self-esteem in some way. It usually stresses me out and hurts my feelings in some way. Other people are a nuisance to me, especially if I don't know them very well. I can't form relationships very easily. There was a time in my life where I wasn't as self-conscious, and so I was actually pretty good at making friends, and I had a lot of friends. But then, I switched schools a bunch of times, and so, I every time I switched schools, I had a harder time making friends. So I don't have any friends right now, and it's been like that for years, probably like 8 years now. I have some people at work who I get along with pretty well. That's been a more recent development for me that I've liked, but still no one outside of work who I consider a friend. And lately I've been feeling like the mountain of self-esteem issues that separates me from success has been somewhat lessened. And I think a lot of that is due to this YouTube channel. Having this YouTube channel has given me an opportunity to be engaged in something that I really want to do for a good chunk of my waking existence. And that is something that is vital for having a healthy self-image. And I'm starting to see that sort of Nietzschean will to power hanging by a thread right in front of me, just outside my grasp, but close enough that I know it's attainable. I mean, I don't expect I'm ever going to become an Ubermensch, but I do think it's possible that I could achieve a habit of doing as opposed to not doing, because that's really the curse of it all, is that I am able to not do, and I prefer to not do, and so I choose not to do. And when you don't do, a certain resentment builds up inside yourself, a sort of resentment against yourself for not taking care of yourself. But this YouTube channel is something that, it's been very difficult for me. I've had long spells where I haven't been productive at all. And even starting out this YouTube channel was a nightmare. So many technical issues, so many creative issues I had to work out. I started working on videos for this YouTube channel in 2020, in like mid 2020, and it took me a year to get anything out. And a lot of that is because of self-esteem issues and the fact that I didn't have any practice yet. So while I had all this potential, I didn't really know what I was doing. And the kind of content I was making was a bit more ambitious than I expected it would be. I expected I would start out with smaller stuff, but the only projects that were actually interesting me to work on were the bigger ones. So I did those, and it wasn't easy. But a little bit earlier this year in the summer, I made an effort to kind of revamp my channel. I invested in new equipment. I kind of reinvested my mind into it. And since then, I've been actually very successful. I haven't had a lull in my production since August, when I made my comeback. I consider it my comeback video, the Why I Still Hate SJWs in 2022 video, which is a video that I'm not quite sure how to feel about at this point. I mean, I agree with everything I said, but I'm not quite sure if I did a great job at kind of making my case. I was prioritizing entertainment over information. I was trying to make it more of a rant video, and make it funny. And but at the same time, I had a message that I really wanted to get out. And so I think those motivations kind of conflicted with each other and produced a product that wasn't entirely useful. But the lukewarm maybe success of that video wasn't really enough to damage the spirit of this enterprise. And so for the next few months, for the last few months rather, I have been making consistent videos. I've been making consistent content, and it's actually been kind of the way I've wanted it to be since the beginning. I never liked having those big dry spells and then making one giant big long thing. I've always kind of wanted to make smaller stuff. And so now it really feels like I have more of a control over my channel, more of a control over the creative vision of this project. I'm no longer worried about performance issues, because I think a lot of the performances on my old videos are not very good. Especially my Penda's Fen video. That video is a total train wreck. I mean, it's a good script. I think it was well written, but the editing and the production is just horrible all around. It's unwatchable. Oh, and speaking of unwatchable, my Antichrist Superstar video, which is currently my most successful video yet, really, I mean, I expected it would be. It has 10,000 views, which is amazing for where I am in my channel right now. Think about it this way. You have to have, I think, 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 views total on your whole channel to get monetization. I don't have 1,000 subscribers yet. I only have 600, but I have like well over 25,000 views on my channel. So that is where I think you can really point to my success in starting out so far. Also, a few months ago, actually before my return to YouTube, I did a mathematical analysis, and I found that if you are to add up the runtime of all my videos that I made in that first 10 months, you would end up with about 18 minutes of content per week if you created a mean out of it, which is pretty good. Not every YouTuber can make an 18-minute video every week, so I think I'm doing pretty well as far as getting stuff out. And now I'm feeling a lot more confident about what I'm doing here, which is giving me a chance to reflect a bit and to think about the future a bit more, and not focus so much on just doing whatever is coming to mind, trying to keep that creative flame alive. I think it's alive. I think it's got enough fuel on it now that I can think I can strategize a bit more. So that's what I'm gonna do because I do have some ideas for what I want to do with this channel now that it's been up for a while and I've had some experience. First, let's talk about the Marilyn Manson videos. Now, these are my most popular videos, and I think they're my best videos. I think my Marilyn Manson content is the stuff that I have probably the most unique voice about. It is a niche that really needs to be filled, that there's no one really filling right now. And they're easy for me to make, and that's very important. There's a kind of creative flow that I get where I don't get stuck and mired in the project. I can just move through it. And so because of that reason, I have kind of prioritized making that kind of content so far in the last year. And I want this to remain a big staple of my channel. I want to keep making Marilyn Manson videos for a long time. Obviously, I have the Fundamentally Loathsome series that it has an end date, you know, not a specific date, but it has an end goal, which is, you know, I'll do an episode about every album, I assume, unless there's some albums that are just not worth talking about all that much. I assume I'll do an episode on every album, talking about the entirety of Marilyn Manson's creative life in that period, and then personal details that are pertinent to understanding his creativity. And then the last episode of that series is going to be called Fundamentally Loathsome, and it's going to be about the controversies of Marilyn Manson. That's why the series is called Fundamentally Loathsome. And so, but that's going to come in years. It's going to be years and years down the line where I finish that series because, well, it's a big project and there's a lot to do, and I have a lot of other things that I want to do at the same time. Like, for instance, the Marilyn Manson deep dives, which were a great idea. It's been a great success so far. Both deep dives that I've published have over 1,000 views, and I really love them. I love the product, and I love making them. I still have more to talk about regarding Portrait of an American Family, although I'm not really sure how I'm going to do it, because I had the first 2 episodes had pretty kind of clear themes that they're running with. Don't really know what I'm going to do, if I am going to make 4 or more on Portrait or just 1 more. I don't really know. I definitely want to talk about My Monkey and Snake Eyes and Sissies, if nothing else. Those 2 songs are really, really interesting. But I don't exactly know how I'm going to frame it. So that's an interesting project for the future. But I'm going to continue making those deep dives. And my thought is, like, I'll do a Fundamentally Loathsome episode, and then I will do the deep dives of whatever album came before that. So I've done my Antichrist Superstar Fundamentally Loathsome. Now I'm doing the Portrait of American Family deep dives. When I put out my Mechanical Animals Fundamentally Loathsome, I'll do if there is much to say about Antichrist Superstar, I'll round that off in the deep dive afterwards. I think that'll be a good pattern. You know, it's basically a way for me to kind of catch up on whatever I didn't get to say in the Fundamentally Loathsome, frame it in different ways, find different angles on explaining the Manson artistry. And I think there's a new perspective you get on a Manson album after you've looked at the next in the series, because I definitely think that my perspective on Portrait changed somewhat after I did my Fundamentally Loathsome analysis on Antichrist Superstar. So I do think that there's an interesting quality to the deep dives where I have more perspective to add to it than I did before. So that's one thing that I want to make a big feature of my channel. But I have one more thing that I would want to make a big feature of my channel for probably the rest of my channel's life, in fact. So I made that video about fascism recently. that people seem to like. I haven't really got any big criticisms or scathing remarks about it yet. It has over 1,000 views, not a whole lot of comments. So, I'm interested in getting more feedback on that because I really want to know if, maybe I got something wrong, especially regarding the National Syndicalist, which was a question that I didn't really know a whole lot about, and I kind of winged it in that video. So I might have totally misrepresented them. I tried my best though, and that's all I can do. But the first project I ever worked on for this channel was not Marilyn Manson related. It was fascism related. I tried making basically a video about fascism that would chronicle the rise of fascism. And I wanted it to be a series, like a limited series, like a 10 episode series about fascism specifically. Ambitious, but limited in its scope. Now, eventually I got burnt out on the subject, and because, I hadn't made a video before, it was all a bit stressful. I got very into the study of it and just kind of lost my mind a bit, and some tumultuous personal things were happening at the same time. So I just kind of set it aside and focused on the Manson stuff to get away from all of it. And that's how we got where we are right now. And the reason I chose the fascism topic was what I talked about in my video about how, I wanted to understand fascism because of how it was talked about on the left. But in studying it, what I found was I was very, 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 very fascinated by it. More so than pretty much anything I've studied. But what I'm realizing right now is that it's not so much fascism per se that I'm interested in. It's just the entire sphere of right-wing politics. I'm very interested in the right. And my interest is genuine. It's not motivated. It's not... See, I'm not on the right, personally. I am politically left-wing. That's just where I find myself. I'm not committed to it. I'm not married to the idea. So I'm not on the right. But I also don't... I'm not afraid of the right. Sometimes I see other YouTubers talk about the fascist right or the far right or whatever, and they put this spooky music under it, and they speak with such reverence, and it's like it's just ideas, man. I mean, I know that they've had horrible consequences historically, but at the end of the day, it's just ideas, and you need to stop acting like ideas are so terrifying. It's silly, and it otherizes people. It pushes people more into their secluded bubbles. It encourages people not to think about ideas because ideas are scary. So my interest in the right wing is just a genuine curiosity. It's just a genuine fascination and an appreciation for it in a weird way. Like, even though I'm not necessarily with them, I'm not one of them, I find their motivations somewhat intriguing and somewhat inspiring. And I can see what they're kind of going for. It's not my philosophy, but it's not so foreign that I can't understand it. And I don't view it as just some barbaric caveman sort of gruntings and groanings, which I think I might have in the past. I think a lot of the times people on the right are expressing very valid emotional concerns that are just not being addressed or really taken seriously by the left, which then encourages a kind of resentment to form between the two groups. You know, I think the left just looks at everything very logically and says, well, this is the logic, and if you don't agree with the logic, then you're just an idiot. And there's more than just logic. There's actually, I'm going to make a video at some point talking about the logical and the mythological, the rational and the irrational, because the human mind is not fundamentally logical. It's actually fundamentally illogical. And logic is just a tool that it uses to accomplish fundamentally illogical aims. And so I don't think you can dismiss right-wing thought by just appealing to reason. I think you also have to appeal to emotion, and you have to be sympathetic with it in order for anybody to listen to you. But I'm very interested in the right, and I want to make a bunch of videos about various right-wing philosophies and movements. And fascism will be a big focus for me, or fascistic movements. And I want to explain these topics in a way that just presents them in the most holistic way that I can. I don't want to make videos for people to just come away with them with a bunch of reasons to hate the right. I want to make videos for people to really understand the right from the right's perspective first and foremost, and then temper that perspective with my own nihilist, defaulting left perspective. And I think the combination of those two perspectives can create some very enlightening explanations if I put enough effort into the research and analysis, which I think I can. So my next video about the right will be a video setting up Italian fascism, looking at the historical circumstances of Italy. So I'm reading a lot of books about the history of Italy, which I'm finding very entertaining. It's been a long time since I've really read a lot of history, and I think I'm a lot better at it than I ever used to be. And I've created a system of note-taking that is actually conducive to productivity. It doesn't slow me down at all. And it keeps me interested in the text that I'm reading. So, yeah, it's actually, I think my prospects are looking up for this next video and the series as a whole. It's going to take a long time to make. I'm just starting out in my research, reading books about general Italian history, and then I'm going to focus on French Revolution, Napoleon, Risorgimento, World War I. I think that is what my video is going to be about, just setting up the politics of Italy for the fascists to come in. Because I think you got to understand the background if you're going to engage with especially right-wing thought. Because left-wing thought tends to have a more universal character to it, because again, it's based on logic rather than emotion. More so. I'm not saying that left-wing thought is always rational or that right-wing thought is always irrational. I'm saying that that's the kind of the core, or the core motivation of these different philosophies. And obviously right-wingers believe that right-wing politics is very rational, and they have some good reasons to believe that. So I don't know what I'm getting at, but you know what I'm saying. The kind of positivist mentality of the sort of liberal socialist tradition differs from the religious mentality of the conservative tradition. And so I guess what I kind of want to do is try in a weird way to create an actual dialogue between the left and the right that is not just about two opposing sides trying to convince each other of the truth as they see it, but a truly deconstructive and curious dialogue where people are actually just interested in each other's ideas. And I think that these videos focused on right-wing politics are kind of a good avenue into that for me. And then my thought is, hopefully in the future, if people learn to stop caring so much about opinions and start just looking at everything, considering everything equally, we might be able to kind of mend the social tensions that people are so keen to point out and so unwilling to actually do anything about, and unwilling to set a good example. Everyone thinks that the social decay of the country, that the social tensions that are ripping the country apart are the other person's fault. It's never your fault. It's always just that guy over there, Bill Maher.
Fuck you, Bill Maher. I'm sure whenever anyone comes up to Bill Maher and wants to give him shit, there's some big motherfucker with a gun to keep any people away from him. Go fuck yourself and your mother.
What are you, a fucking expert?
Fuck you, Bill Maher. Fuck you.
Yeah, you can applaud that.
Fuck your mother, you know, fucking asshole. Fuck you. Go fuck yourself. He's such an asshole. How about I talk like that about the First Amendment and you shut your fucking mouth? How about I go, hey, no one needs that First Amendment. You know, the one where Bill Maher can go on Jay Leno and mouth off about other amendments. Go fuck yourself. That cunt is a douchebag and I fucking hate him. And he's got no concept of what freedoms in this country are. He gets on his dumb fuck show and talks shit like that all the time.
It's funny to me just how immature the political culture of today is. People think that we're just so advanced, but we are in like one of the we are just at the end of the beginning of our ideological evolution. That is assuming that some catastrophe doesn't wipe us out, and an ideology isn't going to solve that. You're not going to find the magic bullet ideology that's going to convert everyone and make the world a more harmonious place. The revolution has to come from the head. So it almost feels pointless to try to even do anything in the world of temporal politics when people are so spiritually behind. And so that's one of the missions for my channel, is I want to sort of elevate the plane of this sort of spiritual awareness of what we are doing to cause our own misery, and what we can do to mend relations between each other. And I think there's still a place for entertainment and for ranting. I really do love a good rant. But I think what's important is maintaining a spirit of irreverence. I think the problem with people is that they just take things way too seriously. And so a rant video is actually a good way to kind of try to loosen up the vibe a bit and kind of poke at people to get them offended in order to get them to maybe question why they're offended. And to do it all with a kind of awareness that what we are doing when we are ranting is not meaningful, in the sense that we are not making an impassioned plea. We are not demagogues. We are not ideologues. We are fools. We're entertainers. We're satirists. We are court jesters. And so I really want to inject a spirit of irreverence into everything that I do, because only by being able to laugh at things can we overcome our fear of them. And I guess I need to learn how to laugh at myself, because the plague that's been afflicting me my entire life is just my inability to find any sense of humor in my own failings and in the failings of people around me. I'm very sensitive about other people making mistakes. You know, I have that really strong kind of, what do they call it? Secondhand embarrassment. That sort of empathetic reaction that results in the cringe. I have that really bad. And yeah, the lack of self-esteem and the lack of esteem for other people just makes me in a constant state of embarrassment, whether I'm embarrassed for myself or embarrassed for other people. And there's a lot of harm in that, and I want to get beyond that. So I'm kind of entwining a personal spiritual process with the kind of intellectual work that I'm doing. And I want to create intellectual work that uplifts people and uplifts me in the process. And the Marilyn Manson stuff is an important part of this too, because, you know, Manson he's such a larger than life icon for me. And he's become more and more so the more I've studied him. Just how brazen he is, and how self-assured he is, and how that is reflected in his philosophy. That is something that I don't have any of. You know, I don't have any of that self-assuredness, that brazenness, that desire to promote myself. And but you know, it's a problematic personality as well, and it's caused a lot of problems in Manson's life, I think, with the band and the music industry and everything. His marriages even. Well, his first marriage at least. So, you know, everything has pros and cons, everything has positives and negatives, but that's what I love about Manson, is that his work is all about kind of presenting the illogical contradiction in everything that we do and everything that we believe. And so there's a real kind of lovely jester quality to Marilyn Manson. And that's why I think his art is so important to explore and analyze. I think that there is a message in it that people still haven't fully understood. So those are the main two things that I want to focus on with my channel: right-wing studies and Marilyn Manson. There are other projects that I'm interested in doing as well. Like, for instance, I've been rereading 7 Pillars of Wisdom lately, because I'm interested in making a video about what actually happened to T.E. Lawrence in Daraa. If you've ever seen Lawrence of Arabia, there's a part where he's trying to infiltrate the city of Daraa, and he gets captured by a Turkish captain. And then there's some weird sort of erotic tension where the captain starts touching his nipples, and then he responds violently to it, and then he's whipped, and then afterwards he's just mentally very shaken and wants to quit. It didn't really go down like that in the book. Something a little bit weirder happens in the book. And and well, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense in the movie, because what, he just gets whipped and then he's like totally demoralized by that. I'm sure that might happen. He seemed like someone with a much stronger will in the movie, so it was weird seeing him get completely demoralized. In the book, it makes a little bit more sense, because that's not actually the thing that catalyzes his defeatism. It might have contributed a lot to it, but what eventually defeats him mentally is, I believe, something to do with Zaid, the youngest son of the Sharif of Mecca, not living up to his obligations. Like, Lawrence gave him some money that he was supposed to spend on these provisions, and he didn't. And he was like, where did the money go? And he's like, I don't know what happened. So he was just like, okay, I can't get anything done because these people are just not taking this seriously and nobody respects me. And so that's why he left, as far as I can remember. Again, I'm rereading it, so I'll pay close attention to those parts on reread. But the issue here is that historians have questioned what Lawrence wrote about in Daraa. They've questioned whether this is authentic, and I don't know why. And that's kind of the problem, is I don't know what their complaints are and why they're making them, or what to really believe. And so, this is why I do all my videos. I do all my videos to investigate things that I would like to investigate, but don't really have any motivation to do unless I'm making a video about them. So I'm going to make a video about what really happened to Lawrence and Daraa. Eventually, don't know when that's going to come out. Also, there's a video that I mentioned at the end of my first deep dive, a video about English hill figures. And that one has been just stagnating for a long time. And I don't think it's going to come out anytime soon, and I'm not going to prioritize it anymore. I was prioritizing it for a little bit, and I've decided not to do that, because it doesn't seem like right now is the time for that video. But I also think that it's not going to be a video about English hill figures. It's going to be another series about hill figures, and the first episode's just going to be about the Uffington White Horse. So another topic that I'm very, very interested in is England. And I've read a lot about England. It feels like my spiritual home in a way. And so I definitely would like to make more stuff about England in the future. And the hill figure topic is one such video. But then aside from those, there's a bunch of topics that I've thought about, made little notes. I have a whole list of potential video topics. But mainly I want to prioritize my two main things, my Marilyn Manson and my right-wing stuff. The other stuff I would like to, throw in if I can, but not really commit to it. And of course I'm going to continue making little videos. I like the little videos. They keep me moving. They keep me feeling productive. And so I'm going to make as many as I can. The ideas come to me in my head at random points, and then I get inspired to get on camera and make them. And I like that. That feels very old school YouTube, and I want to keep some of that old school YouTube quality in my stuff. I don't really want to get super polished with it. And really, this is a personal vlog. So this is really a vlog about me, and I want it to be about me. I think of YouTubers, there's two different types of YouTubers. There's the product-driven YouTubers and the personality-driven YouTubers. And this is a simplification, but the product-minded YouTuber thinks, I make videos. Videos are a thing that I make, and I put them out as a product that stands on their own, and people enjoy the videos. And that's what I do. The personality YouTubers are more like, I have a personal vlog that is about me, is about who I am. And if someone watches my videos, they watch my videos for me, to see me. That is more along the lines of what I am interested in doing. But it's not really the kind of content that I make or prioritize. And so I want to somehow be a personality-driven YouTuber who also doesn't just talk about himself. And so instead of prioritizing stuff that's about me per se, I want my personality to come through my content, and I want to be appreciated through the stuff that I make about other topics. And really, being a YouTuber is my highest ambition in life, which is, again, a blessing and a curse. It's a curse in the sense that I don't really have any aspirations that are particularly motivating me to move beyond my current station. I don't want to be a doctor, you know. I don't have those kind of professional ambitions. I have creative ambitions. And so that creates a problem where there's a lack of practical effort and a lack of financial interest in life. So I'm gonna, you know, navigate around that somehow. I'm gonna get my bachelor's degree, which is something that I never really knew if I was gonna do. Was always skeptical of the idea. At this point, however, it seems like the best path for me at this moment. So that's what I'm gonna pursue as my priority in the world outside of YouTube. The big scary world outside of YouTube that I hate going into. I gotta somehow find a way to keep going back into it again and again and again and make it work for me. But at least I know that I can always retreat back to YouTube and have a space carved out for myself where I can express myself in a way that I can't in real life, in a way that I am very inhibited in real life by both internal and external factors. So this channel really is the only thing that I live for. This channel is the sole thing providing meaning in my life, and that's not a good thing. I want to create more ties between myself and some sort of a real community. But I am just, like I said, I'm so feral and mentally isolated that I have trouble doing that. But I suppose that's one thing that interests me about the right wing, is that they do have a more of a communitarian sense to them, in that they're not cosmopolitans. They don't see a community as just, you know, everyone is in the community the way left people see it. To the right, community is something a bit more essential. I guess that's the right word. More spiritual in a way, not just pragmatic. And so I think there's a certain amount of wisdom in the right wing mode of thought, even if it's not really applied in directions that I think are all that productive. And so that's another thing I really want to explore. I want to bring out what wisdom can be gleaned from positions that, you know, at one point in my life I may have scoffed at. And so I want to create a kind of syncretic thought, not syncretic in the way that fascism was syncretic, but syncretic in a way that has a very clear understanding of what matters in life. And from that, pulling in everything that can inform that perspective in a productive way, left and right. And I hope that there are other people who can see the value in this and will want to keep following my channel and seeing where this leads. You know, there's a lot of efforts to kind of find some common ground between the left and the right. And right now, I think one that is sort of it's trying to become a thing is the sort of populist, the broad sort of populist politics. Crystal and Sagar from Breaking Points are kind of they're an example of this, where they will tend to agree on things. So it seems like they're both, like when I first saw Rising with Crystal and Sagar, I thought they were both progressive. I didn't know that Sagar was a conservative. And so it seems like they are trying to unite what is considered the populist right with the populist left. And I don't really, I can see some value in this approach. I don't think it's enough, because I think that you're not going to find any real common ground between these groups, because they're just too fundamentally opposed to each other. So instead of trying to find common ground on a populist level, I also think that the idea of populism itself is polarizing, because it then puts you at odds with elitists, or so-called elitists. And I don't think that populism is always right and elitism is always wrong. I think that there are certain elitist ideas that have value. Like, for instance, the idea of technocracy is something that I've seriously considered in the past. And while I'm not ultimately convinced by it, I think it is something that could definitely aid us if we were to apply it in a way that works. So I don't really like the whole populist syncretism. I don't think it's going to work. I don't really think it makes any sense ultimately. What I want is a syncretism where people loosen up their convictions. So instead of becoming a more firm populist and creating a vanguard of people on opposite sides working together for a common purpose, I want people to kind of abandon the idea of this sort of purposeful outrage culture. And people feel so validated in being outraged. And I think we should stop normalizing it. We should stop encouraging people to get outraged at things. And it seems like people think outrage is a virtue. Like, oh, I'm such a good person because I'm so mad at this thing. The real virtue is in appreciating things, seeing the good in things, not the bad. And so while I might feign outrage if I do a rant video, I want there to be a self-awareness to it, where you recognize that we're just being silly. That my expression of outrage is a joke in itself. I'm never serious when I act angry. It's always for a laugh. It's always to be fun. And I know that this message isn't going to totally resonate with people, because they are so locked into this idea that we have to treat things so seriously. That, oh, these topics are super important because they affect people and their lives and their material conditions and their mental health. Yes, all of that is true, but you're never going to actually create a more harmonious society until you put your best foot forward and do your part to be harmonious within yourself and within the wide, wild world of outrage. So that is the mission statement of this channel going forward. And, well, I hope it yields good results.